Our big story on this edition of In Your Interest is the India-Canada diplomatic face-off and the economic ramifications that are possible due to that. India and Canada have had a diplomatic face-off. Their diplomatic ties might be strained at this time, but the two countries are still holding strong for now in terms of their economic links and trade ties. But the question only is, for how long will that last? New Delhi ordered the expulsion of 6 Canadian diplomats on the 14th of October and announced the withdrawal of its High Commissioner to Canada, along with other targeted diplomats. This comes after Canada labelled certain Indian diplomats as persons of interest in an investigation into the killing of Khalistani activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. India quickly fired back, calling those actions part of Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's vote bank politics. Now, Canada's diplomats have been asked to leave India by the 19th of October. And according to reports, Canada's actions were based on what they described as evidence of ongoing violent criminal activity linked to the Indian government. But despite these diplomatic blows, experts say trade and investment between the two countries may not immediately feel the impact. Canadian pension funds have invested over $75 billion in sectors like infrastructure, renewable energy and financial services in India, making the country the 4th largest recipient of Canadian foreign direct investment, or FDI, by the end of the year 2022. Now, Canada also plays a crucial role in India's agricultural sector. It is one of the world's largest producers of potash, an essential component in fertilizers, and a major exporter of pulses like lentils and peas to India. The head of the India Pulses and Grains Association has pointed out that it's too soon to tell how these political tensions will impact the trade of these two important commodities. But then, any policy shifts could have serious consequences. Moreover, on the request from Canadian government in February 2021 for COVID-19 vaccines, India approved the export of 2 million Covishield vaccines to Canada under a commercial agreement between Serum Institute of India and Verity Pharmaceuticals of Canada. Now, while trade with Canada makes up only a small part of India's overall external trade, India exporting about $3.85 billion and importing $4.55 billion worth of goods from Canada for the last financial year. While the proposed Free Trade Agreement, or FTA, talks between the two countries have been on hold since September 2023 due to political concerns again. Now, with over 600 Canadian companies operating in India and Indian companies growing in sectors like tech and steel in Canada, there's still immense business potential between these two countries. But with diplomatic tensions rising, will these trade ties continue to thrive? And if they do, for how long? What will be the future of the Indo-Canada trade ties and business ties? We have a very special guest joining us to explore that. We have Mr. Ajay Sahai, DGFIEO, now joining us. Mr. Sahai, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here on this edition of In Your Interest. Talk to us. For now, we understand the trade ties will not be impacted, but certainly there will be an expiration date to that statement.
So it looks like it's more a political rhetoric and it will not affect the trade ties. In fact, we are not having the best of relations with Canada for last 1 year or so. But I think when we are looking at our exports or imports, they are following the global trend. There has been little dip in India's export in last financial year, but that has been the overall export growth also. And so has been the trend in imports. So I don't think that Canada will anyway impacted with these developments. Secondly, I think our share of trade with Canada is quite minuscule. Both imports and exports are less than 1% of India's overall imports and exports. So we are in any case not impacted. I think some people have highlighted the challenges in import of pulses and fertilizer. I do agree that roughly 25% of India's pulses imports comes from Canada. That's an area of concern, but then we are looking into various alternatives also which are available. Myanmar is a great supplier of pulses. We have also seen Australia supplying a lot of pulses, and then we have the African countries like Mozambique, Tanzania, Sudan, Malawi. So we are not unduly worried on that. Same is true for the fertilizers also. Russia has emerged as a major supplier. So I think except for these two items, where we should have our antenna now open, we should not be unduly worried with these developments.
Okay. fact of the matter is that those two things that you mentioned, fertilizers and pulses, are crucial to India. At this stage, and the fact that India has been even up until 2021, when India approved the export of COVID vaccines to Canada, the trade ties were absolutely flourishing, and in fact the hopes were of a free trade agreement. Now those doubts about the free trade agreement between India and Canada is only going to get worse, which means that any unlocking of more trade potential between these two countries is going to get stalled.
I do agree that, of course, the free trade agreement talks will definitely be impacted with these developments. In fact, for last 1 year or so, we are not engaged with them. But then it is not something that it will push India's exports to Canada in a big way, or so will be the import. It will be just incremental. But I do agree that if free trade agreement happens, there will be little more market access available to India. But looking into the potential of export to Canada, because Canada by and large is dependent on the US market. The US contribute to more than 50% of the global imports into Canada. We are not looking into very quantum jump in our export to Canada, even if we strike a free trade agreement.
Ajay Sahai, the question here is that there is a lot of potential that comprehensive economic partnership agreement between India and Canada, if that goes through, you're looking at literally India-Canada trade doubling in size going forward, but and that contributing significantly to both the economies, both the GDPs of both India as well as Canada. So in that sense, this diplomatic face-off does cast a shadow in the big picture. Bear in mind, 600 companies is not a small number. That's the number of Canadian companies that are operating in India, and there are so many Indian companies operating in Canada. It is going to be a difficult time for them in the near future.
So in fact, first of all, I do agree that if we now have a free trade agreement with Canada, definitely it will push our export, but it will not have any significant impact on the economy. We are around close to 4 trillion economy, and our export to Canada is $4 billion. Even if we double it, it will just $8 billion. We are looking into an export target of $1,000 billion by 2030 of merchandise. So these will be little insignificant number, but definitely the greater market access would be available. I do agree that a lot of investment from Canada has flown, probably because of the pension funds which have invested heavily into Indian market. But if you look into the cumulative FDI from Canada, it is not extremely significant for a country like India. But I do agree that these kinds of setbacks will not be good for the trade or investment. We hope that this just remain a kind of political messaging from both the sides, and it will not impact trade and investment. In fact, in the last 1 year, we have seen that despite not having a very good relationship, it has hardly impacted either the trade or the investment.
Right. I'm asking this question because right now there is no Indian High Commission in Canada. So for businesses operating in Canada, Indian business operating in Canada and Canadian business operating in India, it will be a difficult time for them to coordinate anything if anything were to go awry.
In fact, I have not looked into whether Canada has also reciprocated by denying the business visa. We have to see. A lot of Indian businesses have a long-term visa because in the past, Canada has given them a long-term visa. But now with the technology coming in, even if the fiscal visit is not there, I don't think it will dent the businesses. Most of the companies now, they work on a digital platform to transact the business. So it will not be significantly impacting the trade or the investment, because now gradually everyone is moving towards a virtual platform.
Right. The only other community, clearly who's going to be impacted in the immediate future is basically the students over there, and the students who have gone from India to Canada to study and in hordes that too, they will be, this will definitely impact them for sure.
I do agree. For students, this is a cause of concern because a lot of students from the middle class, they have gone there. They were hoping that they will be further doing the jobs in Canada. There may be a little question mark on that. But I personally feel that Canada should look into their business interests also. Indians are contributing a lot in terms of education, which they are getting in Canada. So good sense should prevail. And I hope that for their own interest also, they should look into providing the same kind of treatment which they have provided to Indian students in the past.
Right, because at the end of the day, it is these Indian immigrants who have contributed so much to a country like Canada, in terms of their skills that they bring and in terms of their work ethic that they bring and contributing and building Canada.
No, that's true. Otherwise, no country would have given the permanent residency to a lot of Indians, which they are doing it because Indians are contributing a lot to Canadian economy. They are in need of Indian professional manpower to run various businesses also. That's why I think they will take into a long-term view rather than going by the short-term gain emanating from these kinds of initiative or the actions.
Right, they will look at the long term, but in the short term, if, for example, if you are a tourist Indian tourist in Canada and something, say you lost your passport, you got pickpocketed, something happens to you, they don't have the Indian High Commission to go there to complain.
No, I do. There is little setback. I'm not saying it's a business as usual. Some setback will definitely happen, but I don't think anyway significantly it is going to impact the trade or the investment. The short point which I'm making is that there will be definitely setback if embassies are not working, but the kind of technology which is being used, if you are virtually transacting a business, that will remain unimpacted. So not significantly, there will be much impact, but of course, if you are talking about a particular cases, there may be little disruption.
Okay. The reason why we're having this conversation is that we're hoping that nothing major goes awry. But the fact of the matter is that especially with Canada and the way things have been for the last 2-3 years since 2021, and that's what is putting fears in the minds of people watching, so many of them watching this broadcast, that a face-off of such acute nature, where we're literally expelling every single diplomat, asking them to leave on an immediate basis, shutting down the Indian High Commission. This is the kind of escalation that we have not seen before, and hence the fears over what it would entail.
No, I do agree. Probably Canada has initiated this controversy and India has responded that. So that is definitely there. But I hope the country as such will be taking a long-term view rather than gaining politically in the short term. I think the country has to look into what is the economic gain emanating to them by these actions rather than what they get politically. Unfortunately, the good economics is not good politics.
And that's exactly why the fears, Mr. Sahai. One last question. What we are probably seeing play out right now is good politics for good economic sense to prevail. The hope is that it prevails sooner than later, because all of this for now, it's absolutely fine, not a big problem. But going forward, if it extends for too long, if there's any more escalation, it will mean a lot of trouble.
I do agree, but now elections are around the corner in Canada, and pretty sure the Canadian citizen will be taking a very conscious call on all these developments.
Okay, so you are leaving it up. There are too many elections. This is a great election year. We have the Canada elections coming up, and then we also have the US elections coming up. So in that sense, we are saying the fact that like Janta Janardhan when it comes to an issue like this.
That's true.
All right, we will leave it at that. Mr. Ajay Sahai there, Director General of FIEO, taking time out to be with us here on this edition of Indian Interest. Thank you, Mr. Sahai, for taking time out to be with us. And with that, we're out of time here on this edition of Indian Interest. Thank you so much for watching. This is Krishna Kumar signing off.